There were days where I thought, God, one day, what happens if I wake up and he is dead? And that's something that I had thought about previously. And that was this kind of worst case scenario. And then it happened. And I've lived through this kind of what was my worst case scenario. And I'm still here.
Yeah.
And anytime things get really bad now, I'm like, it could be much worse. It has been much worse. And yet somehow, some way, I made it through that discomfort and really bad emotional point to this point where it's rough, but it's not so bad.
It all starts with a single question asked to an anonymous caller. What do you think happens when we die? And from there, the conversation goes in completely unexpected directions. Some speak with certainty, others with doubt. Some are still trying to make sense of it all. I'm Zach Ansell, and this is When We Die Talks, a podcast about death, meaning, and how that shapes the way we live. This podcast was born from my own fears around death and the need to talk about it. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. I'm glad you're here. Hey, welcome back or welcome here if this is your first time. Our caller this week used to have a reoccurring dream. They'd be somewhere ordinary, a grocery store, a restaurant, and they'd look up, and the person they'd lost would just be standing there, alive. And every time it turned out everyone lied. Friends, parents, everyone our caller ever trusted. All of it staged to convince them that they were a bad person. And every time, just seeing this person alive again outweighed all of that. That person they lost was their housemate, their partner at one point, and also one of their closest friends. They died in the house that they shared, and our caller was the one that found them. And that dream, in a really strange way, kind of became a reality. It wasn't just some late night thought of would you rather have everyone you love turn against you or have the person you love never come back. I think most of us would choose to save the person we love, but unfortunately that's not a choice we get, and certainly not one that our caller got either. Just as a bit of a warning, this one deals with suicide loss directly. Take care of yourself with it and skip today if you're not in the right headspace for it. Let's get into the call. I hope you enjoy.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm dealing with a little bit of maybe like a chronic injury. Maybe that's the best way of saying it. And so it just acting up this morning. So not too pumped about that, but I am excited to be on the phone with you.
I'm sorry about that. That's rough.
That's life sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for being willing to do this, for being willing to jump on the phone and talk to a complete stranger. I was very intrigued by your application and excited for the conversation that we're going to have. Maybe just briefly, you could let me know why you wanted to do this conversation. We'll obviously get into a lot of topics around death and dying and these things, but I like to get just kind of a rough idea. And I think a lot of this is for the listeners to have maybe a little bit of an idea of the application, and not saying that you need to remember what you wrote or anything like that, but maybe just to get a little bit of an idea about you, why you wanted to do this, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I won't lie. I don't remember everything that I put into that application at
Totally.
this point.
Totally.
But I know that I had applied not too terribly long after a loss that I had completely shook my world. My housemate, recent kind of ex-romantic partner, and a really good friend of mine took his life in the house that we shared together and staged something that he wanted me to come across.
Oh, wow.
And it really just changed a lot of my thinking about kind of death and the idea of being left behind in that way. And it was not divine intervention, but seeing your podcast at that time and listening to a few of the episodes, I was like, wow, no, I love this.
Oh, awesome. It very much seems like when you applied, it was very topical to what was going on. And usually I don't ask more questions here. Usually we get to know you a little bit, and we'll still do that. But I am curious because I did influence your answer a little bit by saying, letting the audience know your application a little bit. And so maybe the other part of that question that I'll ask you, is there anything else that's come up? We don't exactly know when the application happened or whatnot, but is there anything else that's coming up maybe now? Is there anything that's live now around this topic? Or is it still just in that same theme? And like I said, there doesn't need to be more, but I just wanted to check all the bases. Maybe there's some new information that I can ask more questions about later.
More than anything, I think it's still that,
Yeah.
but now it's not as fresh, which I think would not have probably been the best. I would have had very emotionally like wrought kind of answers, and I probably would have regretted things that I said then
Mm,
because emotions are really high at that point. But
yeah.
now, having gone through and talked to multiple like mental health professionals and really processing every thought I had about it, it's nice to come into it now
Mm.
with, I think, a much more stable and a like grounded up idea of it.
I love that. And I don't know, sometimes this feels so woo woo to say and stuff, but I don't know. Sometimes it does feel like these just happen when they're supposed to happen, whether it is the random luck of the draw or like sometimes stuff comes up in my life and I have to reschedule and whatnot. And then I get on the phone with someone and it's, oh, if we would have had this conversation 2 months ago, I wouldn't have read that thing a week ago that perfectly applies to what we're talking about. So maybe too woo woo, but I don't know. We're speaking at the right time and I am excited to chat more about it. I don't want to necessarily say feeling better, but maybe more clarity around the situation and not necessarily
Yeah.
because yeah, emotions can pull us a lot of different directions. I don't want to say I'm glad that you're feeling better because that feels like the wrong statement. I'm glad that you have more clarity around it. I'm excited for us to talk about it, even though it always feels a little awkward to say that I'm excited to talk to you about this really difficult thing. But I'm just really excited to hear your story and talk to another human and connect. But before we do that, and I guess we'll still be doing that, but maybe we can get to know you a little bit. Obviously, we're keeping the anonymity and everything so you feel comfortable saying what you want to say. And so the couple questions I like to ask are where do you live now, like state, and where did you grow up, state again, just to get an idea of maybe where your ideas were formed around this topic. And then the second kind of question is what's your favorite book and why?
So born and raised in and around about the same kind of central Texas area,
Okay.
but a lot of my family is from the Midwest. So I think a lot of that kind of ideals also ties into that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite book, it jumps around, but one that I read last year that I was obsessed with and would tell anybody that would listen was a book called The Death of Jane Lawrence,
Okay.
which was it had a really interesting kind of magic system. It was like a standalone kind of gothic fantasy book, really cool ideas about how science and math are magic.
Oh, interesting. That's cool. I'm excited to add yours to the list. And yeah, I haven't heard of that one. So I'm excited to look at it a little bit deeper and then probably add it to my reading list, which is a problem. There's too many books on there, but
You'll never be bored.
yeah, and I know and the other one is I know I'm never going to get through it. Even though I'm reading quite rapidly, it's like I just cannot keep up with the pace of how many books are coming in versus how many books I'm actually reading. But yeah, thank you for that. I'm excited to check it out. And now we can get into the heart of the conversation and start with the question of what do you think happens when we die?
I used to have a different idea. Genuinely, I think before I was very much more on the ghosts train. There
Okay.
was something that I heard young. I think it applies to like a science, maybe like thermodynamics, that like energy is never created or destroyed in the universe. And
Yep.
I took that and I ran with it. I said, okay, so when people die, their energy makes a ghost, and ghosts have to be real because there's nowhere else for the energy to go. And that was like, I was a whole hard believer. I wanted to see a ghost so, so, so bad. But I don't know. I don't think that relates as much anymore.
And when do you feel like that kind of shifted for you?
I think that was after, not immediately, but I think it was in the weeks following my housemate death. I think that's a moment I thought about it. I don't know. There's a lot of strangeness in the house surrounding that and following that because the landlord of the house was his dad. And
Oh,
so there was a
okay.
lot of tumultuous feelings all coming up all at once. And so we had to leave the house really quickly. And so he was like, listen, I'm not going to be horrible about it, but you have to get out by this certain time. So I'm rushing around the house and all this kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, I wanted more than anything for there to be like a presence.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was alone in the house and I'm packing my stuff up, I'm waiting and I'm talking and even like low key just praying for some kind of sign, some anything, an object moving, some sound, like a feeling, absolutely anything. And I didn't feel anything at all.
Mm.
And so I started to think about it like overnight. And when I was ruminating on everything, I realized it was cruel to be wishing and hoping for that.
Mm.
And that's what I think changed a little bit about how I imagine the kind of energy and like wishing and hoping that ghosts were real in the way that I guess the kind of cultural zeitgeist I grew up in made them.
Mm.
I think that I've landed in that camp now, that it would be somewhat cruel for ghosts to exist.
Yeah, just to be stuck here on this plane.
Yeah,
And to be able to witness and see but not necessarily interact, I guess. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then so where did you end up after? What I can't remember exactly the slight phrasing that you used, but it was like used to believe or whatever. And so now where did you land on kind of your beliefs on what happens?
Think I still hold on to the energy ideas. I think that, and I hope that when we die, that energy goes somewhere else. And I'm choosing now to believe that I think wherever that person maybe most wanted to go, because some people really genuinely believe in reincarnation and they want to just immediately start over with no time in between. So if they want to immediately have their energy rush into a newborn the second that their heart stops, I think they should have that ability. And some people swear by being an animal and like visiting their loved ones like that. I like that. Some people really like that. So I think wherever people want it to go, that's where it should.
I like the idea of there being a choice. And I think that aligns with some other things that I've heard from some people who have called in before and talked about like NDEs and stuff. It very much felt like there was this kind of connective thread of like the kind of state of being that you were in contributed to it. And that was kind of me maybe putting some puzzle pieces together. But I do like this idea of getting some sort of choice and it not just all being, I don't know, not necessarily predetermined or like, but yeah, that you learn something here about what you want and whatnot. And then that you get to apply that and use that on the next phase of things, I guess. And so there's a lot of questions here. I guess maybe just starting in the territory of what have your feelings around death been your entire life? Is it something that you thought about? Is it something that you've been scared of? Was this kind of loss of, and I tried to write them all down because in your application, and I'm not like holding people to what they wrote down on a 2 sentence application or whatever, but you said your housemate. But then when you're talking about it was like your housemate, but it was a former romantic partner. Like there was a deep connection here. Did that kind of send you on thinking about death more? It sounds like you were thinking about death and ghosts as a kid and stuff. So I'm curious about like what your relationship to death has been more of your entire life.
I think that this loss, I think, was the closest. I don't want to say I haven't been close with other people, but I think that
Yeah.
this was the most intimate look I've gotten at it. But I've had a somewhat close history with it for some time. I Any kid has family pets die, and I know that when like childhood dogs would get old, there was a like kind of anxiety of like just waiting for the shoe to drop. I'm like waiting for the day that I'm sad, and
Yeah.
then once that day happens, we move on from that. But in middle school, a close friend of mine took his life, and I was on the outskirts of that because I don't think that I was really fully understanding of it
Yeah.
until afterwards, like maybe years afterwards. That was a complete cessation of a person.
Yeah. That's a hard thing to I think that's a hard thing to grasp any time of life, but especially when you're a teenager and or a kid, any time at that point in life, it has to be very strange to just put those two things together and be like, oh yeah, these like we know it, but to actually feel it and see it and all those things, yeah, it's got to be very strange.
right? Like the idea of trying to grasp forever or like infinity as a concept, because for the rest of my life is forever to my brain
Yeah.
because I don't know how
Yeah.
long it'll be, but that person won't be there for forever. So it's really hard to, it's like sand going through your fingers, trying to picture it,
Yeah.
but you really can't.
And so then from there, from middle school, were there other kind of instances? And in general, how are you feeling about death at this point in your life? Is it still that like strangeness of trying to comprehend infinity and eternity, like all these things, nothing? Is there like fear surrounding this, or are you still just trying to understand?
Not angry. I'm not currently angry, but I associate anger with death a lot because I remember when this friend of mine, when I was a kid, died. I was pretty sad, but I remember my mom was furious.
Mm,
And I didn't understand that when I was young, I was baffled because she was so mad that he would hurt his single mother in that way. And I didn't understand why. How could she be so mad at this person?
yeah.
He was really upset. He led to this. But then years later, my aunt, my mother's sister, took her life. I understood that anger
Okay.
because seeing how upset my mom was, I went, oh, she was so angry on this person's behalf because they can't feel anything but sadness, but they are angry, I think, deep down.
Yeah. And the other thing that is really clear as you're talking about your story and your experiences, your exposure to death has been multiple times through people who have taken their own lives. And so that's a different
There's
category
so
of
much.
things. And I don't say that in a sense of, I never want it to sound like I'm comparing types of deaths and like where they rank. It's nothing like that, but it's a different kind of thing because it is like in the same category of like sudden death, but it's different. And so you've been exposed to that a lot, which is a whole different animal and I'm sure a whole different beast dealing with the grief around that and the things that you're talking about with your housemate. I think you said this too as we were talking, but this is from your application. It's like they staged a scene. And so you've definitely had a very different exposure to death than I guess one that a lot of people picture death to look like, right? Because we already don't like to talk about death, but we really don't like to talk about suicide. Like it's like taboo of the taboo topic. And I think that's why it's important that we do talk about it because it gets hidden and I think that just it isolates it. It makes it more scary in a way. I don't know. I don't exactly know the right words for it, but and I don't know if I've even asked you a real question here, but it is very interesting that this has been your exposure to death.
Yeah. And that's something that I've brought up in therapy before because every subsequent time I've been seeing the same kind of talk counselor for years. And one of the things that she had mentioned is that she was like, you're fairly young. She's like, you're in your 20s. To have seen a lot of death isn't uncommon, but
Yeah.
the amount of suicide is really uncommon. And she was like, there's a statistic about people who lose people that are close to them to suicide and then the kind of comorbidness of their own ideation.
Yeah.
She was like, it's compounding. I'm not saying I'm surprised you're still here, but I'm glad.
Yeah.
And I was talking to her about it and I was like, now that I've seen it from this other side and felt so, so, so bad, basically being left with the aftermath, that's not something, even in the worst depths of how, oh, everything's really bad in my life, nothing will top that. I don't think I could knowingly inflict that onto a person.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people that do are bad, but with the amount, it's just not something that I think could override anything.
Yeah. Using the same, I don't want to say logic, but the kind of what we were talking about when you lost your friend in middle school, and you're like, yeah, it's just really hard to comprehend. And it took me years to figure it out. I'm sure there's a lot of those similarities with finding someone in this situation, right? Where it's seeing someone, like how many, I don't know, like death has become pushed behind closed doors, like even in funerals and stuff. I guess we cremate a lot of people now. So you don't even see people when they've died or passed. And so I'm sure that had to be also one of those things where it's like almost like the wires in your brain aren't quite like connected to like the right spots. And it's, wait, I can't comprehend that there's not a life here anymore.
I'll tell you something really strange though. That's genuinely what I thought. That's how like seeing a body would be. Up until that point, I was in a forensics class. I'd seen pictures and like crime scenes and stuff, but like being in a place with that, I thought I was going to just break down and it was all going to hit me and everything. But the weirdest thing was losing people previously to suicide and not seeing it. My brain would give the worst possible outcome because I knew in middle school my friend had to get morbid. He had hung himself. So for a while, I was having horrible ideas of the minutia of what it would have looked like.
Yeah, your imagination just can run wild with it. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Exactly. But being in the house and walking in to check on him and seeing this, for some reason, it felt like it made it easier for my brain to click that he is gone. It made it way easier. A lot of our mutual friends consistently were having kind of moments where they were saying, I can't believe it. Like it's not sinking in. I keep thinking otherwise. And I have to tell myself, but it was also strange kind of to be the like vector of comfort for that.
Yeah.
Because I was saying, I was there, I saw it, and remarkably enough, it was somewhat peaceful. That it looked like he just laid down on the floor and had gone to sleep. It wasn't a big to do, which I feel lucky for both he and I.
Yeah.
But I think that brought a lot of comfort to people that also knew him.
That's a really interesting point, and I think we used this word earlier, but like that clarity, like it provided some clarity because you're like, yeah, there's not any sort of mystery here that this is some really fucked up joke, some really cruel joke, and they're not gone. They just ran away. And I'm not saying that's necessarily what your friends were doing or whatever, but because your imagination can run with it and do whatever it wants, and you're just like, yep, I am fully clear of what's happened here. I've witnessed it. Yeah.
The thing about jokes, though, I will tell you, even having that like clarity and that connection, something strange that I had a reoccurring dream, not a lot of flashbacks and stuff that I was expecting to come from the subsequent PTSD diagnosis that I got after this whole thing.
Yeah.
But I had a reoccurring dream where I would be at the grocery store or at a restaurant or just out and about in my life, and I would see him just alive walking around, and he would be really nervous, and I would go up and would go, "Oh my God, you're alive. Holy shit. What happened? How's it going? What's going on?" And there was some kind of plot that would unravel this whole secret conspiracy that all of our mutual friends and his parents and my parents who knew him, all of these people in my life had worked with him to fake his death because I was a bad person.
Oh no.
And they were trying to get me to be really sad and upset or to take my own life because I was so upset.
Whoa.
And every single person in my life was in on this conspiracy. But the really messed up part is in that dream, the relief that I felt that he was alive was greater than the upset that everyone somehow that I had ever known secretly hated me so bad to do this. I was like, I don't care. Everybody can hate me. At least this person is alive.
I,
Oh
I,
my God. Tell you what, rough.
I feel like that says something about you, though. When we end the call, I'll read this like little disclosure to you or whatever. But I say it in both places where I'm like, I'm not a therapist. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not here to diagnose. I'm just here to hear people's stories, hopefully overcome some of my fear of death, and yeah, hopefully hold space for other people to share maybe their grief or just talk about weird sciencey stuff. So I'm not diagnosing you, or I'm not, but I would say that says a lot
No,
about you, and it just makes me feel like you're a good person, or it's like that willingness, and not saying that it was maybe not willingness, but like, that willingness to take on the burden of all this, I'm just going to say hate, all these kind of like this anger, hatred, or whatever, for this one person to be back. I get what you're saying of like rough, but that also makes me feel like you're just a caring, compassionate person. And you're like, yeah, if I have to bear all this and whatever, but this person gets to still be here, that's a pretty powerful statement in itself.
yeah, it was a weird time after he died
Yeah, I'm
because
sure.
it just fell in a really bad point. We were friends. We were really good friends, but we just so happened to be somewhat on the outs about the time that his mental health got to this kind of breaking point.
Mm,
And so I don't know anybody that used to know him, which is a little sad
mm,
now, but it's gotten better in the years. But I don't talk to anybody that knew him
mm.
really.
And is that by your choice or by their choice or just a nature of how things are?
Mostly by others' choice. We moved in together. I moved into where he lived, and it came with a friend group because he had known them from high school. And so I suddenly had this huge group of people to talk to in this big social outlet. And then once he was removed from it very suddenly, there was a lot of grief. And I know why the finger pointing happened.
Mm,
I would have rather it been me than somebody else,
yeah.
genuinely,
Yeah.
because I understood and I had been through that kind of grief before. And I could say, I know where this is coming from. I know you don't actually hate me. I know you don't actually blame me. And I'm still somewhat hopeful maybe one day there will be a breakthrough for people, but it's not something that I need anymore.
Yeah. And so in some kind of strange, weird way, the dreams came true in a sense.
Yeah.
Like there's an aspect of that there. Cause I was going to say, I'm still hearing that very much like that, like I'm willing to bear this burden. Same thing with the dreams. Like I'm willing to be the one that, the fingers get pointed at.
I was full of a lot of hate for a while. And I don't use hate often, but
Yeah.
I had a lot of deep hatred for a good time. But then once I think that kind of stage of grief passed, I was just tired.
Yeah.
I think the words, it's not fair, have never left my mouth so often in my life
Yeah.
until this happened. And then over time, wounds have started to heal. And I'm not floored with just sheer exhaustion thinking about it anymore, which
Yeah.
is a huge step up from 2 years ago.
And yeah, I'm looking at your application and that was going to be my next question is how long ago was this? Because the first line in your application is I'm about a month away from 1 year since I found my housemate. And so has it been about 2 years? And so the application was about a year ago. And so, because I'm interested about what your journey has been, what and you kind of alluded to it there a little bit, but what it's been like since. And so, yeah, maybe just even it's been about 2 years.
It would have been December of 2024.
So about a year and a half.
About a year and a half, yeah. It
And
feels like a billion years ago, but also yesterday. And I know that a lot of times when people deal with a grief, like even people who have dealt with grief before, but not this particular instance, feel a kind of tendency of, oh, what can I do to distract you? And some people
Yeah.
like distractions, but a lot of times, genuinely, what feels good is just talking about this person, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything under the sun. You have all of this, I don't want to say energy because it kind of ties back to that, but a little bit of that energy kind of goes into you, I think.
Yeah.
That like their memories and all of the stuff you're holding on to, talking about it, I feel like is genuinely really helpful for people who are dealing with grief in the moment or long, long after.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people understand who haven't been so upfront with it in their lives that like it's so much to carry around. And
Yeah.
even if you're not like taking on part of the burden, just, I don't know, even like good memories is I think the best thing that was really helping at times.
And the really sad thing about all of that is, and I don't necessarily know if it's, I can't point to, oh yeah, I remember seeing this commercial as a kid, or remember seeing this as a kid, whatever. There's not necessarily a message that's easy to point to. I think it's just a general message of, oh yeah, talking about death is bad. It's scary, so don't talk about it. But the worst thing is, that's the last thing that I think the majority of people think that someone who has been through deep loss, great loss, actually wants to talk about. And so it's fine to have distraction. I think that's probably healthy to some capacity, but it seems like the way that we go about dealing with grief is maximize distraction. Don't talk about the thing because the thing will just make them sad and this and that. And yeah, exactly what you're saying. I've heard from multiple people. It's like there's some nuance to it. It's not just like probably don't go up to a stranger and be like, tell me about the person that, you just lost or something like that. That'd be a very random thing to
Right.
do to someone, but there's some tact to it and knowing or just feeling out in a conversation. But by and large, I think it's just like big flashing red lights of don't ask about the person. Don't ask about the person. You're just going to make it worse. Talk about anything. Talk about the weather. That'll be way better. And it's just, yeah, I don't want to talk about the weather right now.
Right.
And so do you feel like you've had people who have shown up for you in that way? Have you been able to find it? Did you have to cultivate it on your side? I know you said you've lost this big community, but did you have other people in your life that were able to show up, or is that a big struggle?
I think there are a lot of times that I avoid just bringing up
Yeah.
with people that didn't know him because
Yeah.
a lot of times it's, oh, my housemate used to do this thing. That reminds me of that. That's a really funny memory I have of him. And they're like, oh, okay, that sounds really fun. And then the questions start. And then it's okay. And I don't know how much I want to say because then it feels like I'm dumping things onto them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to say all of the everything that happened because it's just a lot and
Yeah.
not really something that everybody in the world needs to know. But it's good. I think nowadays I'm getting a lot better at when something reminds me of him saying, oh, that reminds me of this thing, this friend I had. He used to say something like this, or we had a kind of inside joke like this. And it's nice.
Yeah. I'm glad that you have that. And it's great that you brought up the other side of it too, is I was doing it from the other side, but yeah, there also is that like worry on the griever side, but there is, I'm sure, that kind of fear, and you've mentioned it, that I'm just going to dump on these people.
I feel like, and this is a little bit of a kind of out of the box take, I feel like a lot of after the pandemic, there's a lot of kind of terminology that gets thrown around like quickly online when it comes to like trauma dumping and like people venting and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And people have taken that to be anytime a friend of theirs tells them something sad or like they're complaining about their day, when I feel like we're hardwired as people for community,
Yeah.
and people should be able to set boundaries and say, hey, I'm not really in the mood to hear about how bad your day at work was, or I don't really want to talk about your dead goldfish right now. Can we talk about something else? But completely shutting down any and all thing that could potentially make you at all sad or think about sad things, you're not preparing your brain for, God forbid, something happens with you. And
Yeah, for
then
life.
all of a sudden, who are you going to talk to?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a conversation, and it's loosely, I hope this will make sense when I say it. I feel like it's connected enough here. I think it was actually, I was getting interviewed on another podcast, but I often say to people that I haven't had a lot of loss, and I'm 38. I often get told, you're too young to be thinking about death. Like, why are you doing this? And I'm telling this to this other person, and they looked at me, and they had lost, I think, their mother 10 years ago. And they were like, what a privilege it is to not have to think about this, because I don't have that option. And so I think that's the same kind of thing that you're talking about. You can try to avoid negative things or like hard conversations, but like that is part of life. Life is hard,
Right.
and
I don't
death
think that's
happens.
healthy.
No, yeah, yeah. And like you said, there's only one way that you don't deal with this in your life if you're in that situation, and it's you haven't had any loss and you're the one who dies before everybody else. That's the only way that you
Die
get
young.
you get out of not having to have these feelings, have these conversations, have these moments, is you die young. And I think the thing that's really sad for me is hearing that. And again, I'm not trying to like belabor this. Like, I haven't had a bunch of loss, but I get to talk to a lot of people who have. I get to have, and sometimes it sounds like it sounds like you're very smart. You have some sort of science background or something. You've said a couple things, and sometimes the conversation just goes there, right? It's, let's talk about science and nothing and infinity and all this stuff. But I get to have these really deep, meaningful conversations with people. And whether they're really hard or really scientific, or really hard in terms of an emotional, like if they're really deeply emotional, heavy, or they're very, I guess it can get really heavy into science too in a different way. But I always leave these conversations feeling so connected with another human that you and I, the odds are, would never meet. It's probably astronomically small that somehow we would meet outside of this capacity. Like, I live in Oregon, you live in Texas. I don't know, just the odds are so small. And I don't know, I hope that's another aspect of this, is showing people that you can have hard conversations and how it can connect to people. I don't know, I went on a little rant there, sorry.
No, that's perfect. No, because it started all of these things in my brain firing. And that's, I think, what like the heart of this is, just talking to talk, and like what happens is so natural that maybe other people go, I didn't even think that anybody else thought that same thing that I did.
Yeah.
But it's like so deeper into your brain. But I'm very avoidant. I will admit that, like, for most of my life, I am so avoidant when it comes to discomfort. If it's going to start some kind of argument, I would rather hide it. I would rather, that's the kind of thing that I'm really avoidant when it comes to being uncomfortable or feeling any kind of way. So there's a lot of times where, and even as like upsetting as it is, would think that when my housemate's mental health would get really bad, there were days where I thought, God, one day, what happens if I wake up and he is dead? And that's something that I thought about previously. And that was this kind of worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And then it happened.
Yeah.
And the world didn't stop turning. And that sucked for a really long time, because then I had a couple more days off for the Christmas break for work. But then when the new year started, I had to go back to work, and I had to go and sit down in the office.
And everything's
with
normal.
All of this just rattling around, and people are like, hey, how was your Christmas break? I don't have an answer for that. Genuinely.
Yeah.
It happened.
Yeah.
It was a blur, and I lost memory from most of the following spring into the next year, into 2025. Half of that year, My birthday, gone. I couldn't tell you what we did.
Wow.
But discomfort is going to happen, and avoiding it forever isn't going to stop it from happening. It's going to keep you completely unprepared for it.
Yeah.
And I've lived through this kind of what was my worst case scenario. And I'm still here.
Yeah.
And anytime things get really bad now, I'm like, it could be much worse. It has been much worse. And yet somehow, some way, I made it through that discomfort and really bad emotional point to this point where it's rough, but it's not so bad.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we both think this way. So I think there's obviously more people that think this way. But I almost think of it almost like a little bit of a philosophy in my head of looking at that worst case scenario and then being like, the odds of that aren't going to happen. And so it's like a way for me to walk back. And so I'm sure it's like that really messes with your brain when it's like, when the worst thing did happen. But I love how then you were able to reframe that and be like, the worst thing did happen. And it sucked. I lost time. It sucked is an understatement of what it was. But I did come out of it knowing that like I got through the worst thing that I could imagine. And so I keep moving forward. It's another day. There will be bad times ahead. There will be good times ahead. That is just life. And to me, what I'm hearing is this kind of like beautiful surrender into life of not a giving up of this is just how life is, but no, this is how life is. And I accept that. And I know I can get through really, really, really hard things and still be here and still keep moving forward. And so I think that's really, I don't know if I took that in too much of a motivational poster style direction, but I don't know. It felt like a very powerful statement to hear after hearing what you have been through.
Yeah, and I'm not qualified in any way, shape, or form to give advice at all. But there are so many times, I think, looking back, and I was talking to somebody about this recently, that like trying to remember back and put myself back into those moments to try to maybe get some of those just mundane memories back of the time between then and now. And I remember so many times thinking, this is the worst I've ever felt in my life. It's not fair. I'm never going to come back from this. There is no genuine way out of this emotional state. And I can't tell you how I did it other than I would go to sleep at night and I would wake up in the morning and I would eat and just breathe.
Yeah.
And they say stuff like that in like TV shows and books that like all I did was like the bare minimum. I was on like complete just airplane mode, just going through the motions. But sometimes just the motions are enough.
Yeah.
And you're motioning forward. You're just moving forward and then you'll be out of that headspace some point.
Yeah. Make it to another day. Like sometimes that is,
all you can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're doing something.
Exactly.
And that's not nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say, there's no shame in that, right? And I think there is in the world and the culture that we live in of all this, although I think it's starting to come back about this, just like the productivity maximizing and just like brute forcing everything and I'll sleep when I'm dead type of mentality. I think we're coming back from that a little bit, it seems. But yeah, we really need to like embrace the fact that some days it is just, I got out of bed and fed myself. Like, that's enough. And that's okay. Like, you don't always have to be doing like the social media life and appearing like everything's great and this and that, because it's not always that way. And so normalizing the fact that sometimes it's literally just getting out of bed. It's like you said, it's the bare minimums. Sometimes that is like an A+ day, and that's enough. I know I'll probably end up saying this again after. I do want to say just thank you for being so vulnerable and so willing to talk about this. It wasn't that long ago still. And so I just want to say I am very appreciative of you for being willing to talk about this. Like it's an important thing, and I'm glad that you're willing to do it.
I'm glad I got the opportunity to. It's not something that I talk about at length all that often.
Yeah.
And also this could be somebody else's absolute worst case scenario. And if they ever stumble across this, maybe it'll help.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So yeah, I do have this last question. Like I said, I have the questions I ask at the front that I ask everybody. I like to have one at the end that kind of is also asked to everybody. And so it's, what's one thing you still want to experience in this lifetime?
I guess we were just talking about productivity and this kind of like hustle culture and
hustle culture. That's what I was looking for.
But
that was the word I was looking for and couldn't find it.
Thank you.
Kind of Thank you.
Culture. Yes. I genuinely, though, I think writing a book and at least one person reading it is just the one thing. I don't need it to be an international bestseller. I don't even know what kind of book it would be. I just like words, and I like the way that books have had an impact on my life in a way that I think. So maybe one day writing a book of some kind and it making people think a little differently about whatever it's about for even 5 minutes. That sounds fun.
I love that so much. And I'll say you can get rid of the second part of that goal. I will, if you write a book, let me know. I will gladly read it. I'll gladly read it. So all you have to do, there will be one person that will read it, guaranteed. So all you have to do, so you've got half of it done already. So now you do just have to write the book. Like it's easy. You got this. But yeah, if you write that book, I will absolutely read it.
You're going to have to live 180 to get through your reading list to get to that book.
Oh,
I believe that you can.
I'll move it to the top. I can reorganize. I was going to say, if I have to live to 180 until you write it, that's now maybe a harder ask. But yeah, if you write it, I'll move it to the top of my list. So yeah, now the pressure's on. But yeah, again, I just want to thank you so much. Again, thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing this. Yeah, like you said, if someone else is going through a similar situation, maybe they come across this, maybe it helps them. And at worst, I hope it was good for you to chat about it with a complete stranger with I don't have a horse in the race or anything. Although I do want to see you do well. Like I feel like we're friends and like I want you to have a good life and all that stuff. But yeah, hopefully it was at least an avenue to talk about it. And yeah, I'm really grateful to you for being willing to do it.
And thank you for putting this project together for people to be part of and just to experience listening to.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, let's definitely stay in touch. Keep me up to date on the book whenever you do end up starting it, whether it's tomorrow or 10 years from now, although you should probably start it tomorrow. That's no pressure. But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too.
All right, take care. Our caller mentioned they spent a lot of their time avoiding discomfort. And then the worst thing they could picture happening happened. They didn't fix it or figure it out. They just kept waking up, eating something, getting through the day, and doing it again the next day. And sometimes that's all you can do. Put one foot in front of the other, make it to the next day, and the next one. And at some point, who knows how long, things start to get a little easier. Maybe better, maybe not, but you're still here. On my end right now, it feels like all I'm doing is running from one deadline to the next. Edit the episode, work on the show notes, create the social media posts. Next week, do it again and again. And there's a reason for that, which I've talked about extensively the last couple weeks. Getting closer and closer to these big milestones. But it's also kind of like wanting to know what your birthday presents are a month early. I want to tell you something interesting or funny or profound, and I've got nothing. Most of my energy right now is going into 3, 4, 5 calls a week, building out the structure to get the podcast running smoothly in year 3, and some pretty boring behind-the-scenes business things to get Nemosity more operational. All of the uninteresting stuff you don't really want to know about. And now you do. More soon. I'll see you next week. When We Die talks exist because people have stories worth telling, and most of them never get told in a way that lasts. Nemosity is my attempt to do something about that. It actually started with a guest from the show, and after his interview, he told me how much it meant to have something he could share with the people in his life. So he didn't have to keep repeating himself, and so nothing got lost over time. I couldn't stop thinking about how many people have a version of that. Honestly, all of us do. All of us have a life worth capturing, and people who love us and would give anything to hear it told. Nemosity is a guided conversation with me where we capture someone's life in their own words, where they come from, what made them who they are, and the stories they want people they love to know. The recording is yours, private, personal, something you can share with anyone you want. If someone came to mind just now, even if it was yourself, that's probably worth paying attention to. You can learn more at nemosine.com. That's NEMOSENE.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of When We Die Talks. These conversations don't offer answers, but they do open space. Space to reflect, to feel less alone, and maybe to see things a little bit differently than before. If you'd like to explore your own beliefs out loud, you can apply to be an anonymous caller at whenwedietalks.com. And if a full call feels like too much, the voicemail is always open. Leave a message at 971-328-0864 and share whatever death has stirred in your life. Listener support truly helps keep this project going. If you'd like to support the podcast, you'll find a link in the show notes. And as always, please like, share, and follow. Every bit makes a difference. Until next time, have a good life.